economy because the people are still used to a certain standard of living, and they would be, they generally cater to the needs of the people in terms of having this sort of standard of living, and this sort of environmental policy and these standards actually compromise that. They have a middle class that wants to protect their industry and don't want them to set these standards to cut down on their emissions. So what they will actually do in terms of this policy of the government in this international bodies is that they will want far lower standards for the United States as compared to other countries, so that other countries will be faced with higher standards, relatively speaking. And we think that this is inherently disadvantageous to these sorts of developing countries, because we think that because of this sort of inherent balance of power, the US will always get its way. On principle, this is unfair to these developing countries. But furthermore, we think that these developing countries can't actually have sustainable development because they can't find the balance between the environment and the economy on their own. But third of all, we think that this further skews the playing field in terms of the global economy, and it concretizes the developing countries at the lowest rung of the developmental ladder. It's harder for them to have any sort of social mobility when the developed countries can still continue polluting with impunity even when they already have a very strong economy, and they can't. Ladies and gentlemen, there is no absolute judge in the international organization. The developed countries will get what they want. This is unfair to everyone. Thank you.
For 7 minutes and 35 seconds.
Right, the time speaker for his speech. We now invite the final speaker on the government bench, the government leader.
And the first world nations would actually understand, should these countries need to spend on economic resources purely because the first world nations are suffering the problem themselves, right? Because what we see, the most important thing that we wanted was a binding target. And what this binding target exactly does is to ensure that these people take the proper initiatives. These people, the agreement ensures the government actually enforces and implements policies that will soon effect the change for environmental protection, right? Sit down. Now, secondly, let's look at should the third world nations hold the burden, right? This is the directly contact with what the speaker before me talked about. He basically said, oh, developed nations should contribute more. They should be the one to hold the burden for environmental protection purely because they have great economic standards. First, I've already taught on the fact that the economic problem hits every single nation, right? Just because they're first world nations doesn't mean they don't have an economic problem. But secondly, most important, if you only focus on the developed nations, fine. US, France, the UK, every first world nation has to lower carbon emission. But we leave the third world nations, right? We leave developing nations. We let them do whatever they want. So the carbon emission increases as well. So what you see is you don't see a difference. You don't see that you don't see any sort of positive effect because you'll be balanced out because you are now the third world nations. You don't have any sort of binding agreement to ensure that they lower their carbon emission as well. Because the nature of environmental issues is that the whole world contributes, right? Just because a couple of countries lower carbon emission doesn't mean the rest will, right? Opening.
Okay, given the fact that your target is already set in both paradigms anyway, why can you ignore the sovereign will to balance approach for environment economy, especially when sanctioning engage with us for months?
Because we believe that these treaties are not binding anyway, right? Because you want to stick with status quo. We believe status quo isn't enough. These treaties are not ensuring these politicians actually do something about it. That's the problem that we have. Right? They never provided any sort of solution to what is going to happen to the environmental problem that we're facing. They never actually provided any sort of positive effect. They kept talking about the problem with balanced power, the problem with poorer nations. But give us a proper solution. How are we going to affect the citizens? How exactly are we going to move these nations for environmental protection, right? That's where I come to my third point, right? What exactly is best for the citizens? Because what they want to focus on, because they decided to focus on economics, right? Or we should make sure that economically these people move forward first, then we can worry about the country later, right? But that's already been dealt with by opening up. When they talked about green technology, that's a way for the other countries to invest on lower countries, fairly enough. If you really want to talk about movement forward, you can talk about how other countries could invest in the terms of green technology, right? But more importantly, which was the problem we presented in the first place, environmental movement, in order to sit down the environmental problem, right? This is where BC's speech came in particularly important. The important thing about this international agreement would be they would bind the governments to actually effect policies that could effect change on the people, right? Because the thing about people is that they don't understand what exactly is the need for this environmental policy. What is the need for this environmental protection? Because the thing about people is we do not see the tangible harm. We do not see the world increasing by different temperatures every day. We do not see the icebergs melting in Atlantic, right? That's the problem that we see. So that's why BC's speech was the most important speech in this debate, because he actually showed you the benefits of this binding agreement. How exactly does it bind the governments to effect proper policies that will affect the change in the people, that will create awareness in the people, will create initiative in the citizens to actually start preserving the environment, because they are the ones who do the pollution anyway, Mr. Speaker. So what exactly have I told you today? Is that side opposition has clearly dismissed, right? They clearly don't want to deal clearly with the problem that we have set up. So unless the last speaker, which I wish her luck, would provide us a proper solution to our environmental problem, we believe that the whole of side opposition does not stand because they simply chose to focus on the wrong issue.
Speaker spoke for 7 minutes and 30 seconds.
Right, thank the speaker for her speech. For the final speech of this semi-finals, we now invite the opposition leader.
Ladies and gentlemen, we find it tremendously disappointing that in the semifinals of such a wonderful tournament, we are still disagreeing about the goal of this policy. The goal has clearly been stated. Before the PBT that actually had this motion, it said that the reason we're having this motion is because we need to talk about international obligations, what they are, how they are formed, and their effect. This is not purely about the environment. Because look, opening house already told you that the environment needs to be balanced with the economy. And closing house told you that the reason why this is true is both the environment and the economy are not absolute goods. They're only good insofar as they affect human lives. Because we don't the environment and the economy that was brought up on all four houses. Okay, so let's start by talking about the role of the international community. Now we believe that there has been a lack of nuances in discussion about the international community, because what has been treated as the absolute ideal all down this entire house is this idea that binding targets and the effect of these binding targets is firstly absolute and secondly fair somehow. Now we show you precisely the model they set free. They're talking about the United Nations, which listens to some voices a lot more than ours, because we believe that in a body of 192 countries, it's kind of impossible to know the specificities of every single situation. So what do you end up listening to? You end up listening to the loudest voices, the developed countries, as my first speaker has already told you. Okay, so there's this automatic imbalance in terms of the makeup of the international community. And they were trying to solve this problem. Yeah, keep saying it. They were trying to solve this problem by talking about how there's going to be negotiations after this policy is actually set. Now what? Okay, so the advantage that they brought for you in terms of actually setting these binding obligations is that there's going to be certainty and clarity, and yet we're going to change them after they're enforced. There's an obvious tension between that, but more than that, what we've told you that these negotiations are simply not going to listen to the voices of the developing countries, because they simply don't have that loud voices in this to begin with. And who are the ones that actually make the decision within the United Nations and the international community in general? It is the developed countries. Now, in terms of the role of the international community in this situation, we believe that we need to think about the individual situations of each state. But firstly, let's take closer. Go ahead.
Can you please tell us how you are going to make these environmental initiatives that you support? How are you going to make them work?